So there's a thing called Capgras delusion, which is a phenomenon where people have some sort of issue with their brain. Could be schizophrenia, possibly psychologically induced, but often a brain injury or some sort of neurodegeneration with aging. And Capgras syndrome is when you look at a person close to you, let's say your mother, and you perceive that's not my mother, that she's been replaced with a perfect imposter. And this experience is obviously very compelling, and it results in people making what is, at the face of it, a pretty absurd claim. Like, people aren't regularly going around getting replaced by imposters. Why does this happen? So my understanding is that it happens because there's a disconnect between, at least in some cases, it happens because there's a disconnect, whether sort of physical or psychological. Those are not separate, but the causes could be different. Like a physical, brain injury is very different from getting into some emotionally intense place. And what happens is there's a disconnect between the part of the brain that recognizes faces and recognizes people, and the part of the brain that handles emotions and limbic resonance, so it's the limbic system. And as a result, the person sees someone who looks and appears to be exactly their mother, but does not produce the feelings that they would expect to feel when they see their mother. And one thing that was particularly striking about this is that my understanding is that for at least some of these people, if the mother then walks out of the room and calls the person on the phone or something like that, maybe it has to be not quite so quick, but if the person gets a phone call from their mother, they do not have any sense of this is an imposter. And this is because the sound, the voice identifying parts of their brain are still connected to the emotional centers of their brain, so they're still able to resonate with their mother's voice in the way that they would expect to. So it doesn't generate that kind of distrust. And I think that distrust is a very good word to describe what this is. Trust I don't know how to say what trust is. Trust is an unquestioning attitude is one frame on this by C.C. Nguyen. I will link his paper in the description. And so it's like, most of the time you see someone, you're not questioning whether or not they feel whether or not they're the person that you think they are. Like, it just doesn't even come up. It would be weird and sort of unthinkable to even call that into question. Unless it's a twin, right? And you're like, are you doing twin shenanigans? Another way to think about what trust is it's an embodied feeling of ease. Things are as they're supposed to be, and I can trust my environment to take care of me the way that I expect it to, and to resonate with me. I think resonance is probably actually core to trust. And so what happens in this experience of Capgras delusion is that there is a distrust of the experience of the mother or the friend or partner or whoever, this other close person, and which shows up due to the lack of resonance. And so there's this experience of distrust. Now, people often take their experiences of distrust and then make positive claims about it. This is not my mother. This becomes very hard to talk with, to get shared reality about, because everybody else is like, nah, bro, this is your mother. Like, I don't know what to tell you, right? There's the kind of like, how do we even talk about this? And I'm sure it's very difficult for the mother as well. By contrast, if you're able to say, I can't trust that this is my mother, it doesn't assert that it's not. It leaves space for, her to think she's your mother and for everybody else to, think that or whatever, while also really acknowledging the full truth. I cannot trust that this is my mother. There's a thing it would feel like if it was like, obviously this is my mother. And I don't feel that. Which is another way that I sometimes translate trust. Like, I don't trust that X. It could be translated as, there's a way it would feel in my body if I sort of weren't worried about this, but I don't feel that. So I don't trust that this is so. Because there's a way I would expect to feel if this were so. So I guess there's a way I would feel in my body if I knew that blah, or I would expect to feel if I knew that blah. And so it's like distrust is like a recognition of your own not knowing something that you would like to know. And know is a sort of weird word here. It's like you would like it to seem true to you. You would like it to occur to you. You would like the world to appear in your field of experience in such a way. I think the Capgras delusion is a helpful kind of case study of this because it's so concrete and because we can even talk about what's going on neurologically that generates it, and it's sort of this pattern that shows up. But like anytime you get triggered, or I get triggered, or someone else gets triggered by somebody else, like part of what's going on is there is some sort of thing, some sort of interpretation of what's going on that's saying, oh, I can't trust that something is not about to fuck with me, or isn't even actively trying to already fuck with me. And so that's the same sort of phenomenon. And likewise, if you then flip that and make a positive claim, you are trying to fuck with me, then insofar as the other person is not, or other bystanders don't think they are, or whatever, you end up with a kind of war of frames, a war of worlds, a war of how reality seems to us, which doesn't arise if you're able to see what's happening as, oh, I don't trust that you're not trying to fuck with me. Like that's a fully intense statement that is still about my experience. And so somebody else can say, okay, I respect that you don't trust that I'm not trying to fuck with you. Or, you know, the mother could say, I respect that you can't tell that I'm your mother. And that doesn't require her to agree that she's not, which she's not going to do, because that would be weird. And you might also not trust that, you know, if somebody offers, you know, tries to offer their respect of your distrust, you might not trust that offer is genuine, or that it implies what they seem to be implying it should imply. But it creates a bit more space. So, yeah. Let me know in the comments if you can think of other examples of places where distrust arises and then people go and make a positive statement about what's going on. I think that a lot of what's going on with paranoia is also this. I mean, Capgras delusion has a lot in common with paranoia. Yeah, I mean, kind of anytime somebody's saying like, you know, if somebody's about to do something and you think it's going to cause some harm, and you go like, whoa, don't do that, it's dangerous. There's a big difference between it's dangerous and I don't trust that it's safe. Now, emotionally, they're the same thing. Like, they feel the same from the inside. But I don't trust that it's safe sort of owns that as yourself. And it's more powerful than I think it's dangerous, because your think can be wrong. Like, someone can just disagree with it. They can say, yeah, I know you don't think so, but it's fine. I don't trust. It's like, well, you can say, look, I know you don't trust, I'm going to do it anyway. Or I know you don't trust, but like, are you willing to let us deal with the consequences if it does go wrong? And maybe you're like, yeah, I guess actually. And then, you know, you make a bet and whatever and kind of try it out. But yeah, I don't trust or I can't trust is quite a powerful statement for this reason. It's not all about the words. It's about the underlying thing that is meant by them. But this negative phrasing, in the sense of negating like the absence of trust, or the presence of it's the presence of mistrust, but it's not saying what is so, it's saying what you do not know to be so, or what you do not know to be not so. It's a double negative. So that's some thoughts on Capgras delusion and trust. If you want to learn more about my framework for thinking about trust, which I call the non-naive trust stance, or the NNTD, I'll put a couple other videos in the description that talk about that. But this is kind of a part of the core of that NNTD framework. So wanted to share it in this form.